Hello and welcome to the 36th International Documentary Film Festival in Munich. My name is Sergen Michael and I will be your host today. Together with Barbara Off, I work together as the project manager of the DOK Network Africa. Today, DOK Network Africa is presenting the 8th Africa Day from the Silbersaal here at Deutsche Theater in Munich. Normally, we would show you our films on the big screen here, but due to the corona crisis, we only can meet virtually. Nevertheless, I'm really happy to have you here tonight with me. This year again, we will have an Africa Day specialized on 3 films, and the topic is Moving Beyond Diversity. We're highlighting 3 documentaries from and about the African continent. So tonight we will talk about the concept of documentary filmmaking per se, the role of documentary film, and how we can push beyond diversity. It is about changing ideas tonight. I want to introduce you to the 3 filmmakers that I have here with me. Aïcha Macky, who is the director of ZINDER, Ousmane Samassekou in the up corner left, who is the director of The Last Shelter, and Renzo Martens on the corner right, who is an artist and director of the film called White Cube. Thank you all here, also audience, for being here tonight and sharing with us. And thank you for our guests thank you for being here as well. Dear audience, one last remark. Please don't be shy if you want to ask any questions. I will do the beginning and asking, but feel free to chip in any time. The discussion is as much for you as it is for us, and we have a hope for a lot of participation. My first question is for all of you 3, but we can start with one. Is your 3 films start at very different points of life stories. Some in the audience may have not seen your films yet, so can you tell us a little bit about how you came of the idea of making the film, so why you made the film, and how you came in contact with your protagonist? Aïcha, maybe you can start.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Merci au festival.
Yes, hello. First of all, I'd like to thank the festival for inviting me and for giving me the occasion to show my footage, my film. It's a co-production between 3 countries, France, Niger, and Germany. Ousmane, Kara, on the project. Mendes is my hometown. This is where I was born, and it's there where I find all my souvenirs, my memories. But there is no university there, so I had to go to the capital, and through the international media, through the international newspapers and so on, and national media, I heard what happened, you know. There were terrible attacks, upheavals. Our president was in Paris, you know, when the terrible terrorist attacks against Charlie Hebdo took place. So I couldn't sleep anymore, you know. So I went there to see what was happening. This village was created in the 70s, and we had a lot of sick people because the problem was, you know, no water, no hospitals. In my memory, you know, when I was a child, I just remember that I had to go very far away to get some water and get it back. And it was, you know, terrible conditions with a lot of sick people. I'm also a sociologist, so I just wanted to know what those kids had been missing, you know, and I wanted to know why all this upheaval, all this violence was coming. So I went there the first time 8 years ago to try to understand why all this violence. And I wanted, you know, to document this. And I wanted to try to understand what can bring a human being to become so violent. You know, really existential questions.
Et qui à la date d'aujourd'hui n'ont même pas d'acte d'état civil, donc ils ne sont pas.
Because you will still have a lot of people here in that area there who are not even registered in the civil register. And there are so many people fighting all around the clock just to survive.
Pour réintégrer la société.
And people trying to have a dignity and to get back into society, you know, find some form of inclusion. So that's the subject.
Yeah.
J'étais en contact avec eux parce que j'étais volontaire dans un programme de l'USAID qui s'appelait.
I was working in a program called Search for Common Ground.
Sur la question de comment transformer le conflit. Et on
So it was all about how to transform the conflict.
dans des communes.
So we had those campaigns running, you know, we went to villages, we talked to people, and we tried to help people resuming the dialogues between themselves. And that's the first time I met one of those young people you see in my documentary film. And he took me, you know, he took me to those places you see in my movie. I was born, you know, just on the other side, but I'd never been there before. So that's the story, and those young people helped me a lot to tell the story I told.
Thank you, Aïcha. Ousmane, maybe you can go next, because your story starts at a point where people also feel like they have no other option but fleeing. So maybe you can tell us how you came about to your film and how you met your protagonists.
Alors, depuis que j'ai commencé le cinéma,
Since I started working in
j'ai fait un film sur
the
l'immigration.
movie industry, I've always wanted to do a movie about migration, about you know, family stories. It was there back on my mind, and it's just the story of my great uncle who left. And when we were kids, our grandma used to tell us her story. To her son was a very brave man, you know, who sacrificed his life to try to find some happiness for his family.
De cet oncle, en fait. C'est là que j'ai compris en fait que
So the family had contributed, and I understood that immigration wasn't only a personal project, but in many cases a family project. And so I wanted to shoot a documentary film about migration, but not in the usual way, so to say.
film de
I wanted to show
so,
the people in a different way. You know, not just a political message, not just showing somebody who's traveling and with the usual story we hear.
dans les journaux.
I wanted to tell a different story, or to tell the story in a different way from that what we hear basically in the media. So that's why I did this short film, and I blended it with my own story, with my own experience. Generation Africa, in the meantime, had done a lot of things. So I went to see them, and through ZINDER, to the project of Aïcha, I met my producer. She is also producing ZINDER. So we decided to work on a common project. I had already done a film about migration, and she said, okay, that might be interesting. So
Génération Africa.
I went to the workshop of Generation Africa, and the project was then selected.
Lors de l'atelier que j'apprends, moi,
And
étant
during
ma-
the workshop, I learned that there was this migrant house in the north of Mali, Akao, which had been created. And I was astonished, but I was also curious to learn more about that and to know what was going on in this migrant house. The panelist Albert Scheibel during the workshop presented the migrant house, and he did it very well, by listening to him. I already had in my mind, different scripts and films. And the story of Natasha is the thing, she's 40 years, she's suffering from amnesia, and she doesn't remember how she came back. And this is also the story of my great uncle, who left 32 years ago, and his kids still hoping for him to return. So it's also the story of people who maybe will return and of those who wait for them. After the end of the workshop, I went to the place, to this migrant house, in my small piece of equipment, and I started shooting. And that's how it started with the last shelter. And, we were shooting and shooting, and with that footage, we were always thinking of what could make this movie different. Because this migrant house is a kind of transit zone, for those who are leaving, those who are coming back. And so we said, could be worth, showing this transit zone with abstract images from the desert, which show that the desert is bearing some kind of hope and is motivating people. So the migrant house and the desert are the two locations, so to say, which allowed us to tell this story.
Thank you, Ousmane. Renzo, the difference between Ousmane and Aïcha's film is that you are very much part of your film, so you are inside your movie. Can you tell us also as well, for the people who haven't seen your movie, how you came about the idea to make it, and how you found the locations?
Thank you, second, and of course, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me, and also it's an honor for me to be part of this discussion with Aïcha and Ousmane, so thank you very much for this. I've seen both the films you made, and I'm very impressed, so again, it's an honor for me. I think indeed one of the differences between the film I made and the two other films is that The Last Refuge and ZINDER speak about problems on the African continent and how people deal with it, how they escape or how they try to find a way out, and they are very powerful films. Now, a part of why there are these problems on the African continent is because resources are exploited. They are shipped to Europe and elsewhere, and nothing comes back. And in a way, I'm a white Western man, I'm from the Netherlands. So I'm kind of part of the world that extracts resources from Mali and Congo and Niger and many, many other places, historically, but also now. So I tried, in the beginning of this film called White Cube, I tried to kind of impersonate a white male filmmaker, artist, who all of a sudden realizes, oh God, I'm part of the problem. I'm not only part of the solution because I'm going to make a beautiful film about how messed up things are. I'm actually part of the problem because my lifestyle, everything, from birth until now, I'm 47 years old, I have constantly been subsidized by people on the African continent who make no money, and then they give all the things I need for free almost. So I'm the first, indeed, character of the film, so that was easy. I could just film myself. And it's a strategic decision also, because if I want to film the guys that do the work in Congo, the directors of these big companies, the companies that take away the uranium from from Mali or Niger or the petrol or the palm oil or the garments or the gold, they do not want to be filmed when they do the job. So I'm kind of their stand-in. I'm kind of the guy that I film myself while, you know, in the ways that they would not want to be filmed when they do. So anyway, and that's the first part of the film. But then later, of course, there are many other people who kind of become the main protagonists of the film. And one of them is Mathieu Kassiama, another one is René Ngongo, another one is Irene Kanga. And I met them on a palm oil plantation in Congo, on a Unilever palm oil plantation. And luckily, I become a little bit less relevant to the film. And these are all former plantation workers. Not René, he's an activist, but Mathieu and Irene and many other people, they're former plantation workers, and then they become kind of rich and famous through art. So that's the story here.
Thank you, Renzo, for this insight. Documentary filmmaking doesn't necessarily need a big team. Aïcha, you're very close to your protagonists, and you also talked right now about how violent those young groups are that you are filming. What were the production and filming conditions for you like during the filming of ZINDER?
Merci. ZINDER, il faut le dire, on était vraiment...
Thank you for the question. ZINDER, we were a very small team.
Soit avec le producteur qui est là, Ousmane, Ousmane. Donc,
it's only, you know, 2 or 3 people.
Que 3. Comme je prends la séquence du trafic du carburant, là où nous sommes allés.
So we went there, you know, in the night. Well, the border was closed with Nigeria because there was an economic problem, and there was a lot of drug trafficking and problems with fuel. So it was really, you know, only 3 people, 1 for the sound, the cameraman, me.
Le caméraman, il était dans...
The cameraman was in 1 car with Ramses, and I was in another car, and the sound engineer was hiding, you know, between the fuel cans in the car. I mean, it was quite amazing. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. It was risky. And then in the prison where we shoot the scene, you know, we needed a little space, you know, for the equipment, and we wanted to shoot the inmates, but we didn't want to disturb, you know, the life, the habits of the inmates. So we really had to be very discreet, you know, staying in the background, only 2-3 people at the max. Very, very difficult conditions. When we're shooting, in the what we call the carrière, it's an unusual location with you know, stones coming down, rolling, and one of my people got hurt, you know, because of a stone, and I went to help him, and Ousmane said, "You should shoot that, you know, you should shoot that to show the difficult working condition of those people." And I said, "No, I don't want to show blood. I don't want to show knives, you know." And it's an allegory in the movie, you know. It's the traces I'm showing. All those traces which humanity is leaving behind by doing all it's doing. So, to sum it up, very difficult shooting conditions, very small team every time, because we didn't want people to notice us, you know. We really wanted to stay in the background, discreet, and we had a man saying hatara, hatara every time we met him, you know, and he was calling in people.
Un peu dans des histoires de trafic, en fait, certainement qui voulaient
And
savoir
then
qu'est-ce qu'on faisait.
someone told me he was in drug trafficking, and you know, he wanted to know what we were doing there, and he got kind of angry, so we had to back up, and we had to really stay in the background, stay discreet, in order to finish the shooting. We did the shootings in 3 stages. Some scenes I just did shoot them with Ousmane, some only by myself, but it was quite difficult.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Aïcha. I think you and your team did a really great job at shooting the film. Ousmane, you said before that you wanted to tell the story as well of your uncle and other people who have gone on this to refugee to another country, but kind of vanished and nobody ever hears their story. In Europe, a lot of times you only hear the story of the people who made it or the people who die in the ocean. So can you tell us a little bit more about if it was easy or difficult for you to get your protagonists to be comfortable in front of the camera and for you to film them?
Je pense que en fait, ce n'est jamais facile en fait pour un
It's
personnage.
never easy, you know, for a refugee. And the beauty of the documentary is that of documentaries as a genre is that you have to show empathy, you know. First, you have to explain to them very clearly why you are doing what you are doing. Because that's real life, you know. That's not fiction. So I'm shooting, I'm chief operator, so it makes things easier. And the same conditions than those which Aïcha told about applied to our situation. We couldn't show up there with, you know, scores of people, with a whole team and so on, and people would feel uncomfortable. So it wasn't easy in the beginning. It wasn't easy to create the trust, you know, the basis you need. So I took a lot of time without my camera, you know, just going to meet people, talking to them. So then, you know, step by step, I started shooting, you know, short interviews. And when after a couple of days or weeks, I came with the big camera, they had forgotten that, you know, and they were used to that. But you have really to have this step-by-step approach. People have to be at ease, feel comfortable. I wanted to be close, you know, very close to the protagonists. I wanted to be integrated, so to say, in their life. So that's my way of shooting, you know. I was always want to create this confidence to get very close, near to my protagonists. And it's always a question, you know. But I mean, showing up with a big team is never easy. Never easy. If you need this confidence. And people tell you more of their life, you know. They tend to be more honest, open, when you don't show up with like 20 people. But in the desert, it was quite challenging because there we had like a team of 15 people. I was feeling like I was just shooting a fiction, you know, a Hollywood movie. So we had a lot of people. Ahmad, the second chief operator, then we had another one doing the work with the drones, and the whole logistics, you know, I mean, the drivers, the cars, we were in the desert, we had to drive long distances to find, you know, the scenery I wanted. So we were not, you know, like sleeping in hotels, in 3-star hotels. You know, we had to improvise, to be very flexible with a big team, but it worked well, and it was a beautiful experience for me, because I just discovered the beauty, you know, and the cruelty of the desert.
Renzo, in your film, there is one scene that was really speaking to me. It was when one of your protagonists goes to New York to show their art at one of the museums, and then he enters the hall where the sculptures are supposed to be exhibited, and he goes and thanks his ancestors for building this, thanks everyone for building this hall in there so they can kind of make their art and present it. Can you tell us if you had a special audience in mind when you were shooting the film, and how the art world or other white artists have reacted to your film?
Other white artists, particularly? Yeah. Okay. So indeed, the scene you refer to is Mathieu Kassiama, who in the beginning of the film is a man who climbs these palm trees. They're 20 meters high, to cut out the palm fruits, to then make palm oil and make like $10, $20 per month, so in very dire conditions, but normal conditions in Congo. This is how people survive. And of course, he's also a very talented artist. And then he makes sculptures, and his colleagues also make sculptures. And we 3D scan them, they become scans, and then in New York, they are reproduced in palm oil and in cocoa that comes from this very and many other plantations around the world, and they're exhibited. And so when he had never been in Kinshasa, the capital of Congo, and so he arrives in New York, and he's completely cool. Like he's not intimidated by anything or anybody. So he's a good friend of mine. We were just in Kinshasa 2 weeks ago to show the film in the National Museum in Kinshasa. He spoke to the ministers and the bosses of the museum without any inhibitions, which is really interesting, because I'm not sure if Ousmane and Aïcha have similar experiences, but for me as an outsider, Congo is really a class society. There's a very strong hierarchy of who has the right to speak and who does not have the right to speak. So for Mathieu to go to New York and to really speak very openly, even if he's like part of officially of the lower classes in Congo, is really very, very powerful. I filmed those scenes, so we didn't have a big team. We never had a big team. There was never a separate camera, a sound man. We just put it in the camera. And I think that's fine. And other people, how they react. Well, the film has just come out, right, a few months ago. And it's hard to meet your colleagues. You only meet them through Zoom. So it's very sad in a way. There's no informal discussions. But I think this is one of the most beautiful scenes of the film that you now refer to, because it's a fairy tale, if you want. It's a fairy tale. Like, here's a guy from rags to riches. He says in the beginning of the film, he wants to become a king, and then he becomes a king. So it's a fairy tale, and we like fairy tales. So people like those fairy tales. The problem with fairy tales is that they make invisible the reality for all the other people who are not in the fairy tale, who are still working for $10 a month on the plantation. Luckily, we show that too in the film.
Thank you for your answer. I'm gonna give Moni the chance to chip in with a question if you have any.
Yeah, we already have two for Renzo. The first one is, how did your film project change your perception of the problems, and did you change your attitude in daily life?
Well, for those who have maybe seen the film White Cube, you see in the film that it all changes. At first, I'm like a typical white guy who says, oh, there's a problem, let's fix it. And of course, it fails completely. Like, there's nothing I can fix. there's nothing I can fix because I come with bad solutions. And Mathieu fixes things, and René fixes things. So, yeah, I think there is a global economic apartheid, and it's even worse than a political apartheid, because they blame it on you not being smart enough, not having education, this or that. But it's simply apartheid. And I think, again, that Ousmane and Aïcha have made very endearing, beautiful films about people who live on the losing end of that apartheid. But we are now all sitting in a room in Munich, the winning part of that apartheid. So what Ousmane and Aïcha have done is give us a view on the people on the other end of that apartheid. And what I've done in this film is show how absurd it is that there is apartheid at all, you know? Mathieu Kassiama is completely capable to be on the front page of the New York Times and speak truth to power. But if we leave it to companies like Unilever and other big companies that run the world, then he's gonna die on his plantation without a pension, without money to feed his kids. So that is the absurdity of this global apartheid. And I become very angry if I think about it, very angry. This is not acceptable.
To jump on your point, Renzo, I think in Aïcha's movie, we can really, in the beginning, it seems like you see a group of men who are just really violent, because you see those movies that they make, or they tell you what they have done. But then Aïcha goes really, really close to her protagonists, and you see they've been pushed into this part of town. They've been left by the state. They've been neglected by everyone for decades, and they've kind of lost hope that anyone cares about them. So what they do is they group together to find a solution for themselves. And I think you really see what Aïcha wanted to do is like kind of see the root of radicalization, the root of violence, and why people do what they do. So we saw these reasons. Aïcha, are you still in contact with your protagonist? And have you had the opportunity to show them your movie? I think the translation, for our guest, the translation is going on, so maybe there will be just some quiet.
Je disais absolument, quand on fait un film, en fait, les personnages, normalement, ça devait devenir une sorte de...
Sebastian, we don't hear you, so can you come to the English channel?
I'm on the English channel, but I can't hear her.
Ah, okay, Aïcha
She has to get close to the mic. I just tell her on the French channel.
Perfect, thank you.
Ok, je disais, quand on fait un film, en fait...
When you do a film like this, the protagonists are getting members of your family. It's like relatives.
Je suis en contact avec mes protagonistes.
And so, to answer to your question, yeah, I'm still in contact with my protagonists. And they are promoting my film, actually, in the schools, in high schools, in the universities. So they are actually conveying my message.
Il reste tabou, du fait qu'il n'y a pas de support, on ne sait pas comment les aborder. On arrive à les aborder dans ce sens-là.
And
s'il y a avis de film,
this is very important. When we were still doing the post-production, the cutting and so on and so forth, most of the protagonists saw the film. And then when we had finished the post-production, I was wondering, you know, if the protagonists liked the way I presented them. And you know what they told me? They told, we've never been presented to the world. So they said, you know, most of the people around us have a lot of prejudice and they talk very badly about us. And this gives us a new image, another image. You spend time with us, you know, you try to understand us. So the film is good for us. It shows another image, you know, it shows another face. And this was really, this was a great feeling for me, because I wanted to present those people as human beings, just like you and me, you know, that they don't get stigmatized, as happens most of the time. Because there always is this mental obstacle, you know, psychological obstacle. People, you know, are afraid of those young men, but, you know, they never try to understand why they're doing what they're doing. So this was a very intense feeling for me when the protagonist said, this message is good for us because it shows that we are human beings. 5 from the protagonist, I will invite them to screenings. Because it's not only, you know, the shooting and the film, there is also the after film, promotion campaigns, and I will work with them. So 3 of them, unfortunately, don't have an ID, you know, they don't have an ID. They don't have a passport. So it's kind of difficult. And one of them doesn't even have his data in the civil registry. So I had to contact a lot of friends and people so that they can get an ID to be able to travel. But we now, like, you know, like relatives, like a family. We stick together. And when there are problems, they call me. So definitely, yes, we stayed in contact.
Thank you, Aïcha.
I think I have a good follow-up question regarding the contact to your protagonists. And the question is, how long did you accompany your protagonists?
De l'idée du film, de ma première rencontre avec les personnages,
Since I met them,
commencé à aller, mais j'avais pas de caméra.
the first time, in the beginning, I didn't go to see them with a camera, you know. I just wanted, in the beginning, to talk to them, you know, to get acquainted, to explain to them what my purpose was, to get their trusts. And I told them again and again, I just wanted to show the conditions of the life. And now it's like what? It's 8 years ago. First time I went there, yeah, it was 8 years ago.
Wow.
And it was unbelievable in the beginning. Some, you know, they had weapons, and once they even gave me drugs in the water. And now, you know, looking back, they say, Aïcha, you know what? When you showed up the first time, we thought you were from secret services or from the police, you know. We thought it was an inquirer or something like this. So it took me a lot of time to gain their confidence, and then they got it, you know, they understood. I remember at the beginning when we start shooting, some came and said, you know, you stop immediately shooting, or if you wanna continue, we want money from you. So those young protagonists, they actually supported and helped me, you know, and because I had won their confidence, but it took me a long time actually. It took me a long time, and then they really told me everything about their lives.
I think in Ousmane's film we can also see people that have been felt like left alone by everyone, and then they find refuge in this migrant house. And I think in your films, in some scenes, you can also see what kind of pressure those people feel by their families as well to make it to Europe, and then also the pressure not to fail, to succeed in what they're doing. Ousmane, do you think part of the pressure is also because Europe presents itself to Africa in a certain way, and there's not a lot of authentic report and lack of authentic views of the life of refugees that they have here in Europe?
Oui, je pense que cette question elle est très intéressante.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's the main point. You know, it's a very important question. There are two things. There are the social networks, the media, and all those messages we can see all over the world. You know, Europe is heaven. And and people who make it in a lot of cases are disappointed, but they would never say it, you know. They would never say it. There's this kind of African myth, you know. We have to make it. We have this unbelievable pressure. And those who succeed, even if they have no job in Europe, they cannot just come back. Because if they fail, it's their whole family which fails. So this, you know, because they're under pressure. Why? They're under pressure because their families have sacrificed a lot of things to allow them to live. And it is a sacrifice, you know. You're leaving your family, so it's a sacrifice. And if those refugees fail, they would never come back, you know. It would be admitting failure. And it's a risky business, you know that, you know, crossing the desert, crossing the sea. And I mean, if you make it, if you succeed, you end up in a migrant camps, in a refugees camp. You have no ID, no documents, no nothing. And it's a matter of hope. And 80% of those I met and who left haven't had the chance to have an education, no job, no nothing, you know, hopeless situations. And for those people, there's only one hope, which is fleeing, you know, fleeing, running away to escape the reality of war, of joblessness, you know, poverty. And every refugee is leaving, is running away with his own history. Leaving is being free, and if you stay, there's just hopelessness. That's the paradigm, basically. And every one of them, you know, has his own dreams in life. But leaving is always a hard decision to take for those refugees.
Thank you. I think there are more questions from the audience.
Yeah, I have one very interesting question to the three of you. The question is, the two-generation African films want to change the narrative how stories from the African continent are told and by whom. Is it somehow out of date to tell an African story from a white man's perspective? Or does Renzo Martens tell a global story, a global problematic of political and economic apartheid?
Maybe Renzo, you want to start?
I don't know, maybe I'm not the right person to start.
Or Aïcha?
I'm happy to, I don't know. I think, look, of course it is very important that stories, I mean, for a very long time, stories about Africa were told by white men, right? This is true. And we all know it, and it's very important, and I'm very glad that this is no longer the case. So this is also a financial thing. I've seen in both the credits at the end that both films by Aïcha and by Ousmane have received support, of course, on the continent, but also from grants outside of the continent. And up to 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, this money would only go to white filmmakers. And it's very important that this is no longer the case, so that indeed stories from Africa can be told by Africans first and foremost. So it's long overdue, and it's fantastic that finally it happens. Now, this being said, I think I'm obviously a white filmmaker, and I think I have a mandate. I feel I have a mandate not to tell stories about Africans, but I do have the mandate to film and tell the story of white men in Africa. I think it's very important that white men speak truth about what they do in Africa, because a big part of the economy, even the economy that leads to the stories that are so brilliantly told in the films of Aïcha and Ousmane, are realities created by white men, whether we like it or not. The uranium, again, Unilever, these are not African-owned companies. Maybe in name, sure, but uranium goes to France. The palm oil, the profits of the palm oil go to London. So it's very important. I cannot leave the responsibility to tell the story of what happens in palm oil plantations and the PR about what happens on palm oil plantations to companies like Unilever, because they, to be quite honest, they tell lies. They tell lies. And I'm a consumer of Unilever products. I'm a consumer of uranium that comes from West Africa to France, and then, you know, I eat la vache qui rit, the cheese, it's made with uranium from West Africa. So anyway, as a consumer of that, I feel I have a mandate to look what the companies that feed me, how they do things. I do completely agree. I do not have the mandate to speak for or on behalf of Africans. Of course I do not. And this has changed dramatically, and I'm completely in favor of that change.
Aïcha and Ousmane, do you want to add something to the question?
Aïcha, ton micro.
Can you turn on her microphone?
Her mic is not on.
Okay, maybe you can start, Ousmane, then, or...
Ok. Moi, je pense que, en fait...
Okay, so I will stop. I fully agree, with what Renzo said.
Un regard extérieur, en fait.
African life was always depicted, shown through the eyes of white people, and if you look at some of the films that have been shot, it looks very, very strange, Those are, it's the impression is like, savages and uneducated people. The manuscript of Timbuktu, of course, there is a lot of arts, of creativity, which the world knows about, but then there are all these resources, the uranium and the gold and
surtout en fait documentariste en fait de pouvoir.
And so, as Renzo said, it's important that all these things are shown by Africans. And this is what we do. This is what we are doing.
En fait, et
But there's also a kind of reciprocity, you know, with those who support us from outside. And projects like Generation Africa or Africa Direct, those projects are very, very useful.
de cinéastes africains
They created a new generation, or helped a new generation of directors, producers in Africa who will be able to transmit their know-how to future generations, you know.
Yeah, thank you, Ousmane. Aïcha, you're also part of the Generation Africa project. Your film is also part. Do you agree with those points, and do you want to add something?
Oui, oui, je vais rajouter quelque chose sur ce que Ousmane vient de dire. Oui, allô, vous m'entendez? Vous m'entendez? Ok, je disais en fait, il y a un adage de chez nous qui dit tant que l'histoire de la brousse sera racontée par les chasseurs, le lion n'aura jamais de gloire.
As long as long as the it's a saying there. As long as the story of the hunting is told by the hunter, it will never be the truth.
C'est un village.
And if you look sometimes if you look at the way Africa is described in some movies made by people from outside, it's you get the impression that it's another continent. We talk about the diversity of Africa. Let me give you an example.
Qui me parle de l'histoire de la guerre au Niger aujourd'hui.
The war in Niger today.
Les puissances du monde qui sont chez nous. Comme les
All the powers of the world are present. They're all there.
pour venir tuer des gens. Ça, c'est une vraie histoire géopolitique.
And we have a lot of geopolitical conflicts, as you know. But when you see how this is presented to the world, I mean, it's far from reality most of the times.
Notre pétrole est raffiné en traversant la frontière.
In our country, there's a lot of oil. And
En fait, quelqu'un qui n'est pas de l'intérieur
it's been exploited.
Je ne sais pas s'il pouvait passer 8 ans à aller sur les traces des gens.
And you know what I did, like spending, as I told you, 8 years with my protagonists. What I did, nobody from outside the country, from outside Africa, could do that. And someone, a director from outside, would never get never get the confidence. And this was my main message. I wanted to show from the inside why those young people get radicalized. It's like same story in the United States with the ghettos, you know. Black life matters, and that's the same thing. Those young men, those young women, they just want to have a dignity, you know, have a rights for education.
Avoir une identité en naissant sur un lieu d'hôpital. Et je pense que ça, en fait, il faut être de l'intérieur pour savoir.
And those situations, like the ones in my film, you can only present them if you're from the inside. And that's why the project Generation Africa is very important. To me, it's like an African parliament. We represent states. We talk about different problems in our countries, and we do suggest potential solutions to end these conflicts. And telling the politicians what to do. So all natural resources are exploited from outside. I mean, Renzo told it, and I mean, this will never end. You know. Either we find a solution all together, otherwise we will all perish, you know. And we see that terrorism is on the rise, you know, in the States and Europe with remember, I mean, the Bataclan, Charlie Hebdo, and all those tragedies. So we have a problem here, a big problem with humanity, and we have to find the solution together, all together, urgently.
Thank you, Aïcha. I think we have time for one more question from the audience, maybe? A short one?
Yeah, that's difficult to pick one out. I have so many left. But maybe this one, it's not a question at all, it's a compliment. Thank you very much for these intense first-hand insights. I was very impressed by the films. So, and the maybe last question is really a short one to Renzo. Is the white cube still in place and running?
Yes, of course. It's in place, it's running. Mathieu and his colleagues are making a lot of new sculptures. They're going to be exhibited in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Congo, and elsewhere. And yeah, there's a real museum program, but the most important thing is not what is happening in the White Cube. It's that Mathieu and their colleagues, they're buying back the land around the White Cube. And in another Zoom talk with Siddhartha Masala, who's one of the members of CATPC, he said, well, our art is not what we put inside this White Cube. Our art is our own lives and our own new type of plantation. That is the artwork that we are making. So I thought that was very smart and also touching. Yeah.
That's a nice comment, and I think also everyone who wants to follow what the artists are doing, I found that they have an Instagram site, and I think they're also on Facebook. It's called CATPC, Centre d'Art des Travailleurs des Plantations Congolaises. I'm not good in French, so if you want, you can find them online as well and see their work and what they're doing.
And for all those who have questions left, please feel free to ask questions to the filmmakers directly. We do have a link on our website, post to the filmmaker, post Anna's film team, and there you can ask your questions directly and we will forward them to the filmmakers and directors.
Before we end, I think I have one last question that maybe all of you can answer shortly is, do you think art or documentary filmmaking as an art form can foster sustainable change in systems, or do you think it's just there to show us the problems that we have in society and the world? Maybe Ousmane, you want to start, and then we can go around.
C'est une très bonne question que j'aime beaucoup en fait parce que
That's a very, very nice question. It is an important question. What motivated me, you know, to do documentaries was that you show the reality. There are so many subjects in Africa which are taboo, you know, you're not supposed to talk about it. And with the documentary films, you know, you can show things that nobody wanted to see. And you can change the behaviors of people. You can change the attitude of people's, the mindset of people. And when you work with those protagonists, you also have a good influence on their life. So yeah, there is a mission for us all.
Aïcha, do you want to go next?
Allumé. Vous m'entendez? Bon, je disais en fait, pour moi qui suis venu de la sociologie pour aller vers le cinéma.
I came from sociology, as I told you, and then I started to work in the movie area. And I didn't think in the beginning that this was a way of changing things. But now I'm convinced, you know, I think you can change the mindset of people with the documentary films.
Dans nos langues que nous parlons, sur le genre dont nous savons que les vies sont réelles, ce n'est pas possible.
Because what you show is real life, you know. It is not fiction, it's real life. And it has a big impact. And you can really touch humans in their very heart. Every genre, you know, and be it art house cinema, be it fiction, be it a thriller, has a message. But documentary is real life, and it's, you know, it's facts. And this is how I see it. So I think, yes, to answer to your question, yes, documentary as a genre can change people because it generates a dialogue, you know, questions. And when we have screenings and we show documentary, we have debates, we have discussions, we have roundtables, and we see that people are very curious, and we just realize that they're not conscious of what happens in real life, just around them, you know, just next door.
Thank you, Aïcha. Renzo, I'll give you the last words.
Oh, I'm not worthy of that. I just completely agree with Aïcha and Ousmane. Of course, it's great that films are made, and especially if films are made, as Aïcha said, by people in their own language. Just seeing yourself, your stories being told, is so important within a community. Now, if these stories on top of that travel to outside, they can do maybe more. But already for them to be inside the community, and as I think Aïcha said very much that they would show the film ZINDER in Niger, and so for people to have this other layer of reflection on their own lives is already so much. I mean, so I can only agree with what she and Ousmane said.
Thank you all for taking part in the discussion. I'm taking Aïcha's last words. I hope we facilitated an interesting discussion for all of you viewers, and I hope it was also interesting for you three. I'm really glad you could make it here. Thank you again, Renzo, Ousmane, and Aïcha. Ousmane, also congratulations. I heard you won the at CPH, the DOKS Award for your film, so congratulations at that. And
merci.
No.
Merci, c'est gentil.
And
Thank you, that's very nice, thanks.
For our audience, you can vote for all 3 films as the Audience Award that was sponsored by BR and Dreisat. And you can still watch all 3 films, which I really urge you to do because they're all great, until the 23rd of May on our festival website. You can check out all the information on www.DOK.fest.com. And that's it. Thank you all so much for joining me here at the 8th Africa Day. Thank you again, all of you. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Bye.